Welcome to the live Tailgate NFL trade deadline special. I'm Michelle Margaux alongside Ralph Vacchiano, Bleacher Report's Connor Rogers, and SNY Jets analyst Douzable. Not a ton went on at the trade deadline here, but Ralph, one acquisition was made. The Jets went for lineman Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. What do you think of this acquisition?
Very nice pronunciation by you, by the way. Yeah. It took me about 20 minutes to look that up and try to figure it out. It's a minor deal, but, look, this is the kind of deals that good general managers make. They took a guy in Dan Brown who was barely playing, obviously expendable, traded him for something the Jets could use, a veteran guard, some depth for their offensive line, something every team needs. Joe Douglas, from everything I had been told, did not feel pressured to make a bigger deal, even though we talked about, Marcus Maye and Jamison Crowder and Denzel Mims. He liked what he had. He likes what he's built for the future, but he saw an opportunity to trade something he didn't need for something he did need, and it won't move anybody's needle, but it was a good move.
Right. I mean, the return is nothing, right? So that's the part that makes a lot of sense. And finding offensive linemen, capable backup offensive linemen in the NFL is honestly one of the hardest things to do from the GM chair at this point. This is a guy that's played in a lot of big games for the Chiefs over the years. He's also someone that has not really played this year. So I think for the Jets fans that are expecting him to come in and unseat Greg Van Roten right away and be a Pro Bowl guard, that's not going to happen. But you're one injury away on the interior offensive line from scary hours. And now this gives you a little depth behind them, a veteran, reliable guy.
Yeah, Connor makes a great point. And we saw that this past Sunday, right? George Fant goes down and then Chuma has to come into the game. So getting depth is monumental for a GM. And this is who Joe D is, right? He wants to build the Jets from up front, offensive line, defensive line. You get a good return. Daniel Brown hadn't really played for the Jets. So Tardif hasn't really played the last 2 years, but he is a guy that's played in some big games, like Connor said, in the Super Bowl. So to me, it just made a lot of sense because you're just one injury away from a guard having to come into the game. And now it's good to have somebody that has some experience that can protect Zach Wilson or Mike White.
Connor, no trades for Jamison Crowder or Denzel Mims. And this past Sunday, without Zach Wilson or Corey Davis, we saw this deep wide receiver core play their best ball all year. And really everyone was getting involved. So how do you think the Jets coaching staff really capitalized and took advantage of all that depth?
They put guys in positions to succeed, Michelle. It's really as simple as that. And that's something that I think they did not do the best job of coming out of the gate to start the season. But now you're looking at it. Denzel Mims kind of seamlessly subs in for Corey Davis. And I know Corey Davis is the better player, but Mims is a really good blocker on the outside. He's a big, athletic, fast kind of player that can win vertically. Or you saw very early in the game on the first drive, they manufactured a touch to him, a catch and run threat that even with the holding call on it, he can make things happen. Braxton Berrios is kind of that poor man's Crowder where he can work the middle of the field. He knows how to find the soft spot of the zone. So they have players beyond their top three starters that can do a little bit of everything. Keelan Cole, they even use them as a blocker quite often. And we know what kind of possession threat he is inside and outside. So I think the Jets staff is finally catching up to what they have on the roster where they don't want to just give any of these guys away because realistically, Zach Wilson's going to be back out on the field this year and you want him to have the full offense to grow.
Yeah, I believe Mike LaFleur did a really good job of putting players in positions to make plays. If we talk about Elijah Moore, we saw him more in the slot this game. And then a thing I have been literally screaming about, get this guy some end arounds. And I believe he had 3 in this game. And that's the thing with Elijah Moore. He's just an athletic freak. And in space, he's an issue to deal with. So you just got to get this guy the ball in space. They did a really good job of getting Denzel Mims the ball early and often, as Connor alluded to, on a bootleg catch and run. This guy is 6'2", 215 pounds, and can run a sub 4.4. So you just want to get the ball in his hands and let him go. Did drop that touchdown catch, but he'll be looking to bounce back Thursday. And Keelan Cole is just a receiver that can do everything for the Jets. And to me, was one of my favorite signings in the offseason because he can play in the slot. He can play outside, even has punt return ability. He's their possession receiver, the guy that's going to get the ball on third downs along with Crowder. So I think Mike LaFleur just did a good job, and Mike White just spreading the football around, not really locking in to any set receiver, being able to get the ball to all different receivers. I believe 10 different players caught a pass from Mike White on Sunday.
That part you mentioned about Mike White is so key. And Leger, I know you've been doing this battle on Twitter with people who think that Mike LaFleur just suddenly changed everything.
Oh my God, they're killing me.
Right, exactly. Look, when I watched that game, I kept thinking, this is what the offense was supposed to look like. This is the Kyle Shanahan offense. The difference was you didn't have a quarterback who was uncertain, who was holding the ball and things would break down around him. You had a quarterback who was making very fast read, very quick throws. And when that started to happen and players would hold on to the ball, everything else could work. So a lot of these plays that looked great and worked, and everybody said, where was that? Well, it was always there. But when you're going 3 and out and on third down, you're 3rd and 16 because your quarterback got sacked, you can't suddenly break them all out of the playbook. You just had a quarterback who was a little bit more capable right now, and everything else fell into place.
Yeah, Ralph, I'm glad you brought up that point because, like you said, I have been in these Twitter battles the last day and a half. I charted the couple of games, and just going back, the first time the Jets played New England, 4 out of the first 6 plays were pass plays, and 2 of those were interceptions by Zach Wilson. Then we go to the Atlanta game. 4 of the first 6 plays were pass plays. They went 3 and out, and it was about execution. Jamison Crowder dropped a 3rd and 2 pass. That's execution. That's not Mike LaFleur in the offense. And then if you go to the Denver game, 4 of the first 6 plays of the game were passing plays. So people were like, well, this offense has been totally different for Mike White. No, it hasn't. They've just executed the offense. The thing is, Mike White kept them out of 3rd and long. And Zach Wilson, a lot of times, had them in 3rd and long. And we saw that versus Denver. Their second drive was 3rd and 9. And I believe Ty Johnson catches the pass and doesn't get the first down. He gets 7 out of the 9 yards, and then they have to punt the ball. Well, it's hard for an offensive coordinator to get in a rhythm when you're going 3 and out, 3 and out. The first 15 are scripted. The first 15 plays are scripted. Well, Mike White and our offense almost went through the first 15 plays in the first drive of the game last week. So it's easier for our offensive coordinator to get in rhythm. So, yes, this is the same exact offense, but it was just executed at a higher level this past week.
Well, Jay, can I see your notes really quick? That was very impressive. But it's all highlighted. But no, really, Leger, I mean, how do they keep the offense operating this way when Zach Wilson does come back?
Yeah, and I tweeted this earlier today, and I know me and Connor kind of talked about this on Twitter. It's a want-to from Zach Wilson. Like, There's plays to be had. He has to take the underneath route. Like, the New England game, his second interception on the bootleg, he has Elijah Moore right there in the flat for 5 yards. Now, J.C. Jackson is sitting in cover 2, but if he gets the ball to him early right there, then Elijah Moore can turn up and get 4 or 5 yards. Like, you're looking at 2nd and 5. You're not looking at 2nd and long. You're not looking at an interception because you're trying to throw the ball down the field to Corey Davis. So that's what Zach Wilson just has to learn to do, is just get the ball out of your hands. We saw what Mike White did. A lot of the times he was just throwing the ball to the back because, you know, it was open, and especially when you're playing zone coverage teams. And that's what he has this week again in the Indianapolis Colts. They play a lot of cover 2. They play some cover 1 when they blitz it, and they'll have some, you know, some free droppers, some robber droppers, but they play cover 2 man. So again, this week, finding the back out of the backfield will be big. Now, they will adjust that because they saw what Mike White did on camera. So he has to be ready for that adjustment. But it's all about just taking what the defense is giving you, getting the ball out of your hand. That's what this offense has always been predicated about, being accurate with the football, getting out of your hands, and being in 3rd and manageable, not in 3rd and long.
Ralph?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with all of that. I think that, you know, if Zach Wilson comes out and does those types of things and does, you know, what Mike White did, this offense can keep going. The problem is going to come is if Zach Wilson, you know, comes back and is exactly what he was in the first few weeks of the season. If he's and not even to, you know, take a shot at him. He's still young. You know, Mike White's been around for 4 years, even though this was his first NFL start. Zach Wilson's been around for what seems like 4 weeks, basically. So if he's still unsure, if he's, you know, slow on his reads, you're going to be back to the same old problems, kind of waiting for him to make that big off-schedule play. And while those are nice, that's not the way the offense really can move.
Yeah, I think you alluded to something important, Ralph, right? Is that when you look at it, Mike White has been able to watch a lot of NFL football from the sidelines and in practice for a while, and it translated to the game. He was seeing things before the snap. There are countless plays in that game where you watch, he knows the running back is going to be isolated against a linebacker that could not run with Michael Carter, that could not run with Ty Johnson. And credit to Mike White for delivering an on-time catch-and-run football where 4-yard passes, and there was a lot of 4-yard in-the-air passes, turned into 12-yard gains over and over again. And the quarterback gets credit for that because you're seeing that before the snap. Zach Wilson's had a lot of ups and downs this year. He's not seeing as many of those, though, before the snap because he's 22 years old. So Mike White deserves credit for those, yes, easy throws, but they were big plays.
Hey, Michelle, before you go on, I just want to put this into perspective. A guy that Zach Wilson was compared to coming out of the draft was Aaron Rodgers, right, because of the arm talent and the similar offensive scheme. Well, there was a game earlier this year, and I know Connor can remember this, that where they played the Detroit Lions and they went cover 2 the whole game and refused to let Aaron Rodgers throw the ball over his head. So what did Aaron Rodgers do? For one, they ran the ball. He took everything underneath, got rid of the ball quick, and then he finally got them out of that cover 2 shell. Then he took a shot to Devontae Adams. So, yes, Zach Wilson is young, and anybody that knows me and has followed me knows that I'm a big Zach Wilson fan. When we did the pre-draft, show with Connor and everybody else at SNY, like I was, ecstatic that the Jets took him at the number 2 spot. This is a young quarterback. He's going to develop, but he just has to realize sometimes you don't have to force the ball down the field, even though you have the big arm. Let the offense come to you. Take what's underneath, and then when the defense gives you an opportunity, take the shot down the field.
Ralph, leading up to the trade deadline, we talked about Marcus Maye a lot. Well, the Jets obviously held on to him. Why do you think that they ended up keeping him?
It's interesting. To the outside, he seems like an expendable player, right? His contract is expiring. They've had no talks about a long-term deal. He had that DUI where he, angered the Jets a little bit by not telling them about it at first. His agent kind of hints that he wants to trade. All the signs are pointing to the Jets are just going to get rid of him. But to their thinking, he still has value to them as a leader of the defense, as a guy who can help them win some games right now. So their intention was they would listen, but they would not give him away. I had heard they wanted at least a 3rd-round pick in return. I don't think anybody came even close to that. I heard from around the league that, not only was the concerns that he wasn't worth a 3rd-round pick to a lot of teams, but also some teams were going to want the Jets to pick up some of his remaining salary. He's got about $6.5 million left this year, and I don't think the Jets were going to do that. So basically, they weren't motivated to deal him. Nobody was motivated to get him. So all of us on the outside who thought, well, they should just get rid of him for nothing. It's just not something the Jets were ever going to do.
Yeah, I think the external market makes the trade deadline really hard for teams. They spend all offseason and even summer with late signings, the contenders, I should say, going right near that cap line. And then when they get to the trade deadline, there's not really a lot you can do. Right before we started the show, me and Leger were talking about how even the Chiefs had to maybe move people to take on a couple $1 million of salary. So it makes it really hard. And on the internal side with the Jets, they have nothing at safety right now, and they don't want to punt. They don't want to punt on this season, right? They were expecting LaMarcus Joyner to be an every down player next to Marcus Maye. They don't get him at all this season. Ashton Davis, young player, has had some struggles. There's no denying that. Outside of that, you need Marcus Maye on the back end. And for a lot of people that are saying, well, he'll walk for nothing at the end of the year, you could franchise tag him again. The safety tag is a really low number for a one-year deal in the NFL. So the Jets had a ton of leverage here. They don't want to punt on the season, and they need a veteran like Maye, who's a good player, on the back end to give their defense some stability.
Connor, that brought a tear to my eye, man. That was articulated beautifully. And I've had Twitter bouts about this. Marcus Maye is a really good safety, and if you look at the depth at the Jets at the safety position, it's not good at all.
Nothing there.
So you're talking about a young secondary, right? You're talking about Bryce Hall, a second-year player on the outside, Michael Carter, a rookie, Brian Echols, a rookie. You need some type of veteran presence in that secondary, and we saw what happened when he was hurt. The Atlanta game, it just didn't look good out there. So Marcus Maye being in the back end is big. And like Connor said, you can potentially franchise tag him again for not that much money. This is a good safety. You have a lot of young players in that secondary. You need that veteran presence back there. He's the quarterback of the secondary, and they need him back there.
Connor, Joe Douglas is scheduled to speak in just a couple of minutes at 5 p.m. All the talk this season has been about progress and being in year number 1 of a rebuild. Are you satisfied with where the Jets are right now?
Well, if you asked this question a week ago, I think anybody would look around and go, coming off that New England loss, it's not even close to where they want to be. Now, coming off the upset against Cincinnati, that's a statement for this new coaching staff because it shows you can take an embarrassment and keep everyone bought in and have your players ready to play when, quite frankly, on some teams, guys will check out. Understandably, they got blown out up in New England. It was embarrassing. It started to look like they were going to have nothing to play for before Thanksgiving yet again, which is a Jets tradition recently. Nobody likes that. So right now, you have to build on this, right? You can't go, it's a short week. Leger knows how hard that can be. Yeah. You're on the road. You have no practice. This is going to be tough Thursday, but can you go in there and compete? Can you keep that a ball game where it's not just all about a rookie quarterback all the time? You have a new defense with young players from the front to back that need to be bought in. So far, they've shown that. The draft class looks really good from Joe Douglas. So I think coming off of this Sunday where you've now upset 2 of the best teams in the AFC, you've also had some stinkers. There's no doubt about that. This is kind of where a lot of people expected the Jets to be.
You know what kills me about it is it's exactly where the Jets expected to be too. And we talked about this all off season. So did the coaches and the general manager and the players. Robert Saleh literally said there are games where we're going to look like the worst team in the league and games where we're going to look like a Super Bowl contender. And then what happens? They look like the worst team in the league in New England. And all of a sudden, everybody's like, Saleh's in over his head. LaFleur's incompetent. Zach Wilson is terrible. And, you're just ripping up your tickets. It's exactly what we were supposed to expect. So are the Jets where they are supposed to be? I don't know. Is it enough progress? We'll see at the end of the year. All I know is we're 7 games in. They're up and down. It's maddening at times. There's flashes of greatness, flashes of terribleness. And this is what they told us was coming. So we just better get used to it.
Yeah, I mean, Jet Nation, we knew this was going to be a process, and some people aren't realistic when it comes to that. And the thing is, the Jets just need to play all the top teams in the division of football. That's what needs to happen, right? Give us the Buffalo Bills, give us the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, give us the Dallas Cowboys, because those are the teams that they seem like they knock off. But I think playing on Thursday night is monumental for this team. This is a young team, and I think that bodes well for them as far as body soreness. And Connor alluded to me knowing what it's like playing on the Thursday night. It's tough. Like, honestly, besides the primetime aspect of it, I hated Thursday night football because your body doesn't have time to regen. Then you're talking about an install, trying to get ready in 2 days to play a whole nother team. Like, that is a lot. I don't think people understand how much that is. You just put all this hard work in week long to play on Sunday. And then you get in Monday, you have to regen your body to get ready to play Thursday. But then on Tuesday, when you come in, it's like a Wednesday and Thursday practice combined of getting ready for that game on Thursday. So I think it bodes well. I actually interviewed Michael Carter this week, and he just seemed like he was uppity and ready to go. And I'm like, dude, you have to be sore. Like, all those touches that you had, all those tackles that you broke, he was like, no, I'm fine. I'm ready to go. I'm excited. I've never, been on Thursday night football. My family gets to watch me because, I'm in North Carolina. They don't, routinely get the Jets game. So they'll be able to watch me. So I'm excited. So I think having a young team bodes well for the Jets in this Thursday night game. We know Indianapolis has had some injuries with T.Y. Hilton, Quentin Nelson, their guard has been beat up a little bit. They've had some injuries at the corner position. So I believe, this team will continue to probably be up and down because it's a young team. But as Connor said, we just want to see them build on that victory versus Cincinnati Bengals. And they have a big test this Thursday versus the Indianapolis Colts.
Legit, you just mentioned Michael Carter. I mean, are we at the point where we can give a little bit of love to Joe Douglas's draft class this year? I mean, obviously Zach Wilson has to come back, be healthy, mesh with the offense. But Elijah Vera-Tucker and Michael Carter are proving to be legitimate NFL players.
Yeah, I mean, it's still early in the process, right? We're only 7 games in, but you have to give him some credit. Michael Carter, to me, I thought was a 3rd-round pick that the Jets got a steal for in the 4th round. And we're not even talking about the other Michael Carter. He's a baller, at the nickel position. He is a true baller, has dog in him, will come up in the run game. To me, is playing at a high level, one of the top right now this season, one of the top slot corners in the NFL right now, how he's playing football. And then if you look at it, let's not just talk about this past draft class. You're starting to get some help from the 19 draft class. You look at Bryce Hall, he's played some really good football. Jabari's a nigga. He's on the team still. Showed up, got a sack fumble this past week. And then we talked about Denzel Mims starting to get acclimated into this offense. But Elijah Vera-Tucker was a guy I knew was going to be a superstar on this team. He's a guy during the draft that I wanted to just to really get. I didn't know how it was going to be possible because where they were at, I believe, was pick 22. And I was like, there's no way he's going to be there by the time that happens. But you have to credit Joe D and being aggressive, going up to get him. I think he's going to be a superstar. And we've seen it the last couple of weeks, him road grading guys off the ball and screen games, getting out, in front of the running backs, being able to block. So Elijah Vera-Tucker is going to be a beast. So, yeah, Joe D, you have to give him some credit for some of the acquisitions he's made as far as the draft class and some of these young guys playing at a high level and only being rookies.
I wish we could get a full evaluation of them, though, because one consistency of the first 2 draft classes are almost every one of them has been hurt at some point, which is just – I mean, the rash of injuries for the local teams has been insane, but the draft class for Joe Douglas have been hit really hard. But I think for both years, we've seen enough flashes to at least believe there's a chance. He's got 2 pretty good classes. They've just got to stay on the field.
I think the most important thing, besides the obvious hits, right, like an AVT, is that he's finding starters on day 3 into the UDFA process, where this team for the last decade before that never did that, quite frankly. Very rarely. Robbie Anderson is one guy that comes to mind. outside of that, it was very few and far between. But
maybe Q and Nuwa. That was probably the other one.
Yeah, exactly. There, you can really remember them right away because they were so notable. But with this, you have Eccles out there starting. Like you said, Leger, Michael Carter has been tremendous in every single way. Bryce Huff, a UDFA from 2020. I know he's been hurt recently, but he's looked really good when he's on the field. A waiver claim like John Franklin Myers. They're finding ways to fill out the roster that isn't, hey, we got 3 first-round picks right now, and we got to hit on every single one and get stars. You need to build an entire football team, and you're starting to slowly see the blueprint of that. Obviously, you need one more draft where they're picking twice in round 1, twice in round 2, and then it'll all come together. But so far, because of this last draft class, things are looking promising.
Ralph, switching gears to the Giants, another brutal loss last night. What went wrong?
Well, for them, pretty much everything. Looking back at this team, I think this is my conclusion for the first 7 games. They are talented enough to be a borderline playoff contender, but they are not even close to being smart enough for that. Everything they do well, they find a way to undo it with a dumb penalty. O'Shane Zimenez jumping off sides when Darnay Holmes comes up with the interception that maybe seals the game for the Giants. Elijah Penny with the taunting penalty after a big first down catch that kills what could have been a game-winning drive for them. Joe Judge with bad clock management. Sterling Shepard in the first half, the Giants are driving for a touchdown. He runs a 2-yard route when he needs 4 yards for a first down. Things like that are constant, which is why the Giants, as bad as this season is, they've now lost 3 games on last minute or last second field goals. That's the difference between 2-6 and 5-3. It's not much, but it's their brains, not their talent. They should have won all of those games if they had played smarter football, and this is just not a smart team.
I totally agree. For all those laps over summer and all that tough guy talk of being disciplined, they are one of the least disciplined teams in football. There's no way around it. And it does fall on the staff. Clock management's a problem. I mean, not even knowing if the headset is an internal issue or an NFL issue with the actual technology. These are things that you think, and I hate to use New England because they're an outlier for everything, but if you think Bill Belichick doesn't know every single in and out of the headsets right there, right. You came from New England. So everybody's expecting, if you were going to talk like that you're buttoned up top to bottom, you got to show it. And it's been the exact opposite where, yes, some of it is on the players. There's no doubt about that. But this coaching staff, I don't want to say the clock is ticking fast because it is early, but what improvements has this team made from year 1 to year 2? I just don't see it right now.
Yeah, as Connor alluded to, this is an undisciplined team. And during the summer where Joe Judge was talking all this tough guy stuff, and I said this, I was like, it sounds good. Like, now, if you win, players will buy into it. But great. But when you start losing, like, you'll lose that locker room really quick when you got grown men doing up downs and running around the field. Like, that's not it. And we're under this premise that people from the New England, era, or coaches that come from there can just automatically flip teams around and get them playing good football. It just hasn't been the case. If you look at Brian Flores, Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, it's been a struggle for coaches that have come from the New England tree. But the thing is, besides them being undisciplined and not just playing smart football, they've had a rash of injuries. If you talk about the offensive line, right, you talk about Andrew Thomas, who seemed like he was finally coming around. He gets hurt. Nick Gates gets hurt. So you're talking about being down 2, and then Lemieux gets hurt. You're talking about 2 to 3 offensive linemen out. And we saw at the end of the game when they had a chance to potentially go down and kick a field goal and win, the offensive line couldn't block anybody. And that Chiefs defensive line isn't scaring anybody, just to put that into perspective. They have not gotten to the quarterback this whole year. That Chiefs defense hasn't stopped anybody this whole year, and the Giants only put up 14 points against them. But also Daniel Jones not having some of his playmakers on the outside, Kenny Golladay being hurt. Kadarius Toney was out there fighting for his team, but you could clearly see he wasn't healthy. Darius Slayton has not made an impact this year. So it's been tough. And then also Evan Ingram, who was also talked about maybe getting traded this year. He hasn't really made enough plays for his quarterback this year. So it's been a rash of everything between them not playing smart football, being undisciplined, and then just a rash of injuries.
I'm talking about Ingram. Daniel on YouTube wants to know, Ralph, why they didn't trade him.
Well, it's almost the same answer I gave for Marcus Maye. He has more value to the Giants than he does to everybody on the outside. The Giants, were interested in listening to offers for him, but they were not going to just get rid of him. They don't want to just, throw away weapons for Daniel Jones. Obviously, with all the injuries, they don't have a lot of them at the moment, a lot of healthy ones. So they weren't going to just give away another one just to get rid of him, even though his contract is expiring at the end of the season. They think he's a good player. if he's not, if he is a little unreliable, they get that, but they do think he has talent. They haven't completely ruled out bringing him back next year. So all of that together made them say, okay, we'll listen to offers, but make it a good one. Make it a 4th round pick or something like that. And then maybe you'll get our attention. But I don't think the view around the league of Evan Ingram was high enough where they were going to get a good enough offer to make a deal. And they weren't going to make a deal just for the sake of doing one.
Ralph, if the Giants season continues to go poorly, which I'm sorry for even putting that out there, but that just seems the way it's going to go.
Why would you think that?
Give it away.
What do you think changes in the offseason?
Well, a lot. I think that I don't think there's any doubt that Dave Gettleman is done if this season doesn't involve a miraculous rally in the second half, whether he's fired or is allowed to retire, we'll see. But I think that ownership knows they have to make a change in the front office. There's just been too much losing over too long a period of time. I think that's probably it. And the biggest change, I think they believe they have a core of talent here. Oddly, Dave Gettleman is going to leave them in pretty decent shape if he goes at the end of the season. I think ownership is committed to the coaching staff, but I do wonder, when you bring in a new general manager, it does open the question of, do you want to saddle the new GM with Joe Judge and the staff? Do you want to give that GM a chance to hire his own guy? My suspicion is, and my understanding is, that the Giants love Joe Judge and would hire a GM without changing the coach. But, again, let's see how the rest of this season goes. If this season, is another 2-6 or 2-7 in the second half plus, and the team continues to play dumb football, maybe by the end of the year, they'll have to make a change there too.
And I'll say this about the Giants offseason. If they do move on from Dave Gettleman, you really should do it all together, right? And I know they're going to have a lot of questions. Is Joe Judge the guy or not? But if you're going to bring a new GM, the guy at the top, you want to attract the top guys. Ed Dodds, the assistant GM from the Colts. The Giants, it's a good job. The top guys will want it, but they will want to make their own hires. Ed Dodds, Mike Borgonzi from the Chiefs, guys that are highly regarded scouts that have done this for a long time, made a lot of good selections, made a lot of good decisions overall. You got to clean house if you want to lure those guys. They're not going to go places where they don't necessarily know the head coach, or they don't have the power to move on from the staff or the quarterback, or do things the way they want to do. So it'll be very interesting to see how ownership makes all these decisions over there.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation, because I agree with Connor. If you get rid of the GM, you got to get rid of the head coach, because you don't want that new GM coming in and him and the head coach not necessarily seeing eye to eye. But the thing about the Giants is their cap situation is a little different than most teams that are starting all over. They've put so much money into some of these defensive players that they're going to be on the team regardless next year. And then a guy like Kenny Galladay is going to be on the team next year. Now, what do you do with Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones? So you got to think that a new GM coming in is going to want to tear this down, but essentially he's not going to be able to tear it down because of some of the contracts that the former staff, if they were to get fired, put into place.
Now, knowing all that, one thing you should never overlook with the Giants, and Connor, you mentioned a lot of great names of guys who could be brought in as the GM. There's probably another 10 or 15 out there, young, exciting guys. The Giants haven't gone outside the organization for a general manager since George Young in 1979.
It's a long time.
It's been a minute.
I've had this conversation with John Mara, in good years. Changing the GM to him is such an upheaval. You have to get rid of staffers that most people don't even think about, changing philosophies of the organization. He may think we're on the right track with Daniel Jones, with Andrew Thomas, whatever, and a guy from the outside is going, no, just tear it all up. It's such a dramatic change and so anti-Giant. Even if they're terrible and make a change, I would not rule out them saying the best thing for us is to get rid of Dave, but promote from within. I wouldn't be shocked.
Ralph, do you think that's a problem within the organization at this point, because they've lost now so consistently that maybe they do need to start changing the ways they do things?
I've asked around the league about that, and almost everybody that I talk to says that at the very least, they have to look outside of the organization.
That's fair.
Because they really, in the last two GM searches, they barely looked. I mean, they kind of knew who their guys were. So, at the very least, bring guys in, get some other opinions. Maybe somebody will dazzle you that you weren't thinking of. Is it a problem? Well, it's a problem now. I mean, it worked out with Jerry Reese. It worked out with Ernie Accorsi. So it's hard to say it's a big issue. If they have a guy that they really like, Kevin Abrams, the assistant GM, or Chris Pettit, the scouting director, maybe those guys could work out as great general managers, but they at least have to be open to the possibility. If not, that's an issue. That's just closed-minded thinking.
I feel like Ralph is trying to put himself up for this position right now.
Oh yeah, I'd be.
Go and get up there,
Ralph.
Ralph. Make some changes.
We've talked about my fantasy football exploits, Michelle. You know I'm no good at this.
Yes, I'm well aware, and that is one reason why I feel sorry for you. Also, the fact that you were probably the only one in this Zoom that was there in 1979. That's okay.
Oh my God, thank
Michelle.
you so much.
I love you.
Shots fired.
Wow.
Goodness.
For the record, I was very, very young, but
Unnecessary, Michelle.
Barely. Well, it's all love here. That is all we have time for this special live trade deadline edition of the Tailgate for Ralph Vacchiano, my favorite person ever. Connor Rogers, Leger Douzable. I'm Michelle Margaux. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.